The BMW M6 GT3 is only one of two cars in the Group 3 class of Gran Turismo 7 which exists in two versions which are identical in performance. There is the Sprint version, also known as the M-Power livery version in Gran Turismo Sport, and the Endurance version, also known as Walkenhorst Motorsport version. For this video I will test the Sprint version and we will find out why BMW is always one of the favorites in the GT World Series. The third generation BMW M6 exists in three versions: the F06, which is the 4-door Grand Coupe, the F12 Cabrio and the F13 2-door Coupe. These cars were produced from 2012 to 2018 and came equipped with the 4.4-liter B-turbocharged V8 engine, which had 560 PS and could go up to 575 PS and later 600 PS with the competition model. The M6 has a front-engine rear-wheel drive layout. Depending on the chassis type, the weight reached from 1,925 kg to 2,055 kg, with the two-door coupe being the lightest. You could choose between a 7-gear dual-clutch gearbox and a 6-speed manual. The BMW M6 GT3 was developed, tested and presented in 2015, before its first races in 2016. In its debut year, the car could clinch victory at the 24 Hours of Spa, and in 2020 it also won the 24 Hours of Nürburgring, the crown achievement for a German manufacturer. Wins in Macau and the DTM followed. Compared to the production car, the engine is almost unchanged, with the same power output and a 6-speed sequential gearbox. Additionally, the race car is much lighter, weighing 1,300 kg and therefore shedding over 600 kg of weight. There was an Evo version in 2018 which addressed handling issues as the car was prone to snap oversteer and losing grip unpredictably over bumps. However, Gran Turismo 7 only has the older versions with no aero options for both cars. In the 2026 manufacturers ranking, recorded on 27th of June 2026, BMW ranked in P10 overall, with a total of 758 points over all three classes. In the highest class, GT1, it was placed in P7 with 340 points, which also is the highest rank. BMW is not too fancied in the GT2 class, only placing in P19 with 172.5 points. Lastly, in the GT3 class, it is placed in P11 with 245.5 points. In stark contrast to other manufacturers, BMW competed with two more distinctive models, one being the M3 GT and the other being the Z4 GT3. Considering the ranking, BMW is quite popular. Is the M6 the reason for the popularity? And is it worth the hype? Let's find out. The M6 has the standard ride height of 60 and 70 and frequencies of 3.8 Hz at the front and 3.4 Hz at the back. The downforce levels of 425 at the front and 575 at the rear mean that the car has been set to a more oversteery character by default. It also has a weight distribution of 52 to 48, which is a normal distribution for most FR cars. If we look at the engine and torque curves, the engine curve moves up linearly until around 6000 rpm. It then stays at peak power for 700 rpm before dropping slightly again. The torque curve is stable from around 2500 to 6000 rpm. This means that the car should perform best with high revs, but shows good potential for fuel saving without much of a time loss. The gearbox ratio shows an ideal shifting point at 6500 rpm, which makes sense considering the engine curve. With 6 gears, the first gear reaches up to 117 kph. The first gear could prove to be too long though, but we will see this at the standing start. With the gears set like this, the next gear should be landing between 5000 to 5500 rpm. This should be working well considering acceleration. Now that we know how the car works, I will test the acceleration capabilities. In the first test, I will drive on Tokyo Expressway east clockwise in a custom race with a Group 4 opponent behind me, with a flying start. There's not much to say for the first test. We set an initial time of 24.484. The important settings are BOP on, all setup options except brake bias set off, tire wear times 1, fuel depletion times 1, same conditions set on, and we will use medium racing tires and drive with bumper cam. Shifting at the 50% mark is quite a bit faster. We end up with a 24.335. From the point the game releases me, I will stay on the lane I started and drive until the first sector ends, and note down the time. At 75% ref bar, we have another improvement in time. This is a 24.236. I will repeat these tests several times and with different shifting points. Once at 25% of the ref bar, 50%, 75%, 90%, 100%, and as a last test, rev it out as much as possible. With the shifting point at 90%, we experience another faster time. This time it's a 24.2 flat. If there is a wide difference between 100% ref bar and maximum revs, I will do a further test at half point. For this test, this was not necessary. We get a little bit faster, but not by much. We end up with a 24.178. All times will be noted down, and you will see what effects shifting at the right point has for the car. In the end, only the fastest time out of the set times will count. Now we're driving with full revs. There is not much difference except that I feel like I'm using fuel unnecessarily. We settle with a 24.181, almost the same time as with 100% rev bar. The M6 lands in P3, although the cars are quite near in time. It is a high rever as well. The good thing is that the M6 is quite flexible with the shifting point. In the second test, I will accelerate from a standstill, and at the ideal shifting point which we saw in the previous test. If you will drive a race or championship that has standing starts, this will be important because some cars have long first gears, which means that they will take longer to accelerate and you might be losing positions at the start. The M6 doesn't start well. As expected, the first gear is so long that I can stamp the accelerator and nothing happens. We end up this test with a 28.717. Due to the long first gear, the M6 loses half a second to the other cars. This may be one of the weakest cars off the line. Next, we will do two top speed tests. For the first test, I will open a private online lobby and select Special Stage Route X. The important settings are BOP on, all setup options except brake bias set off, tire wear times 1, fuel depletion times 1, same conditions set on, and we will use medium racing tyres and drive with bonnet cam. The straight is long enough for the car to reach its natural top speed after 10 km. However, the car should stay stable within the last 600 meters and not lose speed. If it does, I'll drive to the other side of the oval and drive a few more kilometers until the speed sets. Despite having less horsepower than the Suzuki and Mitsubishi, the M6 might perform better because it has sleeker aero and is at peak power when reaching top speed. We end up at 280 kph. The M6 takes the top spot as it is 4 kph faster than the other cars. For the second test, we'll change the track to the Daytona tri-oval and drive 2 laps. The settings stay the same except for the track. The first lap does not count as it is meant to get up to speed. The second lap will count and the lap time will be recorded. This test is done to check how much speed the cars lose during cornering, which has to do with the cornering itself, the aerodynamics and the engine curves of the cars. This test will now only be a formality since the BMW has better top speed than the other 2 cars. The M6 ends up with a lap time of 52.282. As expected, the M6 climbs on top of the standing here as well with a gap of 3/10 to the Mitsubishi. The next 3 tests will be quite straightforward. I will test the cars on track and record the lap times. The important settings are BOP on, all setup options except brake bias set off, tire wear times 1, fuel depletion times 1, same conditions set on, weak shortcut penalties, and we will use medium racing tires and drive with cockpit cam. For each test I will drive 1 out lap and 10 timed laps, and I will do this twice. This means that each car gets 20 timed laps. Additionally, the total of best sector times and the optimal lap time will be counted instead of the fastest driven lap, as this provides a far fairer statement. Genuinely, a fastest lap can have errors in it. This will be eliminated through this method. The low speed BOP test will take place in Brands Hatch. This track was chosen due to most low speed BOP tracks having primarily slow speed corners, whereas you see many mid-speed corners here as well. The car feels okay, especially in fast corners. However, can you remember the comments about snap oversteer and unpredictable handling? GT7 replicates that. You have to be very careful when accelerating. In the end, we set an optimal lap time of 1:24.195. This puts the M6 in P1 with the lowest of gaps, only 1/1000 of a second faster than the Mitsubishi. For the medium speed BOP test, I have chosen Interlagos as the track to go to. Interlagos, at least in Formula 1, is a circuit where most cars and drivers are extremely close together in lap times. While the first section tests mid and high speed cornering, the second section tests mechanical grip, whereas the last section tests acceleration and top speed. Unfortunately, I had problems with the recording. No sound was recorded. This will be a problem for the next 4 cars. I see no sense re-recording these parts because the lap times will be different again. I've spent around 4 hours of driving, so yeah, I'm not doing this again. Around Interlagos there is not much difference. The 6 kg of weight increase cannot be felt too much. The slow infield has to be driven carefully, otherwise the M6 could spin out. We set an optimal lap time of 1:32.990. The BMW also climbs on top here with a small gap of 0.08 to the Mitsubishi. For the high-speed BOP test, I have chosen the Autodromo Nazionale Monza as our test circuit. While the first section tests acceleration and mechanical grip, medium and high-speed cornering is tested in the second and third section. Another reason why this circuit was chosen is to test how good the cars are over curbs, as Monza has quite some aggressive curbs to master, which some cars can react allergic to. The low-speed chicanes have to be driven carefully, plus the many acceleration zones are not the forte of the M6. Once again, in the fast corners the M6 feels good and stable. Anyway, we set an optimal lap of 1:49.236. The M6 is beaten here, but I think this is mainly due to track characteristics. Even then, it's only 600ths behind. The next test will bring us to Dragon Trail Seaside for the endurance test. This test determines how the car fares with fuel depletion and tire wear. The important settings are BOP on, all setup options except brake bias set off, tire wear times 5, fuel depletion times 3, same conditions set on, and we will use soft racing tires and drive with cockpit cam. I will drive race pace here, which means that I will drive a bit safer than in the previous sessions, drive round the lines and look if I can save fuel if the car allows it. This circuit was chosen because it is a medium speed BOP circuit, because it has all types of corners and it is a fair circuit considering tire wear where neither front heavy FR cars nor rear heavy MR or RR cars are at a disadvantage. I will skip the major part of that stint and I'll see you later on when the tires are at its end. So I have driven 8 laps and the left front tire is almost dead. Considering the weight distribution and the overall weight of the car, this is a good result. The understeer is getting very noticeable though. As the last line of the front left tire is gone now, I will stop and record the distance and fuel usage. I have driven 8.1 laps. Let's see how this compares with the other cars. The M6 sits in P2. With 8.1 laps, this is just shy of the middle point between both other cars. You can also see that the car has 48 liters left in the tank. We started with 100 liters, this means we used 52 liters. Divided by 8.1 laps driven, this results in 6.42 liters per lap. This may look extreme, but the M6 can also be shifted at 75% rev bar without much time loss. When pushing, the fuel usage must be kept in mind. The setup tests are useful for two reasons. Firstly, it shows how the car is set up and how a few clicks can make the car behave completely differently. Secondly, it shows what potential can be unlocked if you have races and championships where more setup changes are allowed. I will do two setup tests. The first test will be a repeat of the special stage Route X top speed test with all setup options allowed. There, the car will be set to minimum downforce and the top speed will be recorded. Due to the engine power curves and different stock downforce levels, the results can differ widely. The M6 gains 7 kph through the reduced downforce. This is 1 kph more than the next best car. The wider power band really helps here. The second test will be a repeat of the medium BOP test in Interlagos with all setup options allowed. All cars will be set to medium downforce levels on the front and rear, and I will do some suspension and LSD changes for my preference. In some cases, drivability will improve, and in others it will get worse. How much faster or slower the cars can get is up to the standard setting and can differ widely for each car. The downforce levels have been altered to 400 and 600, with the other settings being changed to my liking. There is not too much of a difference in driving. The M6 may be a bit more planted in low speed corners now, but it feels less nimble through fast corners. In the end, I was able to improve my lap time with a 1:32.759. So with the normalized setup we gain 0.231 seconds. This puts the M6 in P2 considering improvement in lap time. This test consists of 3 steps. First, another top speed test on special stage Route X will be done. This time the BOP is set to off, and the cars are set up manually to have 5 to 7% more power, depending on the maximum power output of the cars. The setup will be the same as it is when the BOP is on, so stock. Like in the setup tests, this is to see how much each car improves in top speed. The M6 gained 6% more power in this test. As with the downforce test, the top speed test shows an increase of 7 kph on the straight. With that, the M6 goes up to 287 kph and 1.167 kph faster per percent power advantage. Additionally, acceleration tests will be done, both with flying and standing starts, and with an Unimog as an opponent. The shifting points will be the optimal shifting points as determined in the first acceleration test. We end up the acceleration test with a 23.554. In the acceleration test, the M6 is 0.624 seconds faster. With each percent power increase, we gain 0.104 seconds. For a standing start, the procedure does not need to be changed at all. The first gear is way too long to produce any wheel spin. However, since the car has less trouble going through the low power RPM zone, the time gain will be quite high. The M6 ends up with a time of 27.866. The M6 was 0.851 seconds faster than before, improving by a staggering 0.142 seconds with each percent power increase. The third test will be a repeat of the high-speed BOP test in Monza, again with BOP set to off and the increased power output. Another 20 hot laps will be driven and the optimal time will be noted. Then the lap time will be compared to the high-speed BOP lap time and the value for each percent power increase will be noted down. With this test, you can see how much the car improves by giving 1% more power. It makes no sense repeating what I said the 2 videos before all the time. But once more, the driving behavior is the same except that the acceleration improves and thus we have to be more careful out of corners. The M6 comes through with an optimal time of 1:47.772. The time improvement is 1.464 seconds and a 0.244 second time improvement per percent more power. The last test will be another repeat of the high-speed BOP test in Monza, with the same settings as before with the increased power test. This time the initial BOP power output from the BOP will be set again. However, at least for the Group 3 tests, the weight will be increased by 35 kilograms for each car. This is because the highest ballast weight due to the high-speed BOP is 165 kilograms. Another 20 hot laps will be driven and the optimal time will be noted down. Then the lap time will be compared to the high-speed BOP lap time and the value for weight increase will be noted down. Basically, the difference in lap times will be divided by 7 to have a 5 kilogram time loss. With this testing method, you can see how much slower the car gets by adding 5 kilograms of weight. Once again a repetition, no change in driving behavior can be noticed. The weight increase weakens the car everywhere, so it's just a minimal time loss all across the board. In the end, we achieve an optimal time of 1:49.886, which is 0.602 seconds slower than with the BOP. With every 5 kg weight increase, the time loss is around 0.086 seconds. This is a lot. Maybe I had trouble putting the lap together. The BMW M6 GT3 turns out to be a good all-rounder with some advantages in high-speed corners. It is performing similarly to the Mitsubishi with advantages in top speed and tire wear. However, the car can be quite a handful for beginners as it can have quite a loose rear axle and step out sometimes. I hope you now learned a bit more about the M6 and you now have a better idea how to use its strengths. I also want to mention that from the next video onwards, the lap time comparison will have sound again. Also, the next car is also part of the GT World Series grid and has very interesting stats and characteristics. I hope I will hear from you next time. Until then, check out the other 2 tests I made.